Welcome to Saturday's Warrior and happy Black Friday, everybody. Hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving. And because it's Thanksgiving weekend, that means a couple things. One, that it's rivalry weekend, so we got a lot of great matchups. But it also means that because it's the final week of the season, there are many teams that are vying for bowl eligibility and fighting for some of those remaining spots to become bowl eligible, which means they are in a must-win situation. BYU happens to be one of those teams. They've got a tall task. They're going to Stillwater to take on Oklahoma State, who has plenty of stakes to play for in their own right, that they are vying for a position or a spot in the Big 12 Conference Championship game. So they are not going to be taking this game off. And so BYU definitely has its work cut out for it, even though it looked better. BYU looked much better against Oklahoma last week. Oklahoma State is a different team, and I think that it is a tougher matchup for BYU. But that is to say that while obviously winning 6 games is the best way to become bowl eligible, it isn't the only way. That there is still a chance. Yes, I'm saying there is a chance. So we're going to take a look real quick at the scenarios of what BYU or other bowl hopeful teams can do to become bowl eligible. But before we take a look at that, please like the video, subscribe to the channel. It really does help us a lot. We've been growing a lot lately and appreciate the continued support from all of you. Okay, let's take a look. All right, so first we're going to take a look at these bowl projections from Yahoo Sports from a couple days ago. And here they outline basically all the bowl availability spots and all the teams that are still vying for bowl eligibility. So let's take a look what it says. It says more than 20 teams face a win and in scenario for bowl eligibility during the final week of the regular season. Entering week 13, 68 bowl-eligible teams had at least 6 wins and were guaranteed a spot in the postseason game. That, first of all, I just got to say, first, there's 68 bowl-eligible teams, which means there are at least 34 bowls. We know there's more than that, and we'll get into it. But there are just way too many bowl games. It is incredible, and there's so little interest in most of these games, especially as the games mean less and less, especially as you make there more and more games, the meaning is less. But as the focus shifts to the 12-team playoff, I guess it's fine to have all these other bowl games that give more teams that extra game, something else to play for. I just, there's just, like I said, they don't really mean anything at this point. So it is absurd that there's this many bowls and that still there's more teams that may not even make it to 500 that could get in to a bowl game. Having said that, that might be a good thing for BYU depending on how things go this weekend. So I guess I can't complain. Let's keep going. It says that number doesn't include both James Madison and Jacksonville State, the two teams transitioning from the FCS level to the top level of college football. Each have more than 6 wins but aren't fully bowl eligible. And so that is insane to me too. They are coming from a lower division of football. And now it would be one thing if they're coming from a higher, if they're going from FBS to FCS like Idaho or maybe other schools have done, then I would understand, okay, well, it's not really a fair scenario here. You have an unfair advantage. But they are coming from a lower level. If they play this well, they should be fully bowl eligible. And it should be up to the conferences whether they can be eligible to play in their conference championship game or not. So that to me is absurd. But at least they still have a chance. And it seems like there's a good chance that at least one or if not both of them get into a bowl game. So it says, not counting those two schools, now that I'll get off my high horse here, there are 15 bowl spots up for grabs. Actually, scratch that. Let me know in the comments what you think of that rule, if it makes any sense or why you think that is a rule and whether or not they should keep it, because to me, I think it's asinine. Anyway, now I'll get off my high horse and I'll be interested to see what you say in the comments. It says there are 15 bowl spots up for grabs, with 24 teams sitting at 5 wins after Eastern Michigan's win at Buffalo. And it's actually 23 because I'm recording Friday and some of these other games have already kicked off. I'm recording a little bit later than I wanted. But it's 23 because Mississippi State lost last night. And even though it wasn't in BYU's interest, I was kind of rooting for them because of their connection with Mike Leach and being the underdog in that rivalry. Having said that, it ends up being a good thing for all of these other schools that are also hopeful that they could somehow find their way into a bowl game. It says, and it's extremely unlikely that all 24 of those teams will get a victory. Yeah, obviously. So it says 6 of the 5 win teams are double-digit underdogs. That's good news, although BYU is one of those. And just 12 of them are favorites. So that group of favorites includes a couple of matchups that are close. They're within a field goal in the spread. So they're kind of toss-ups. But it says if all the favorites win in Week 13 and Navy beats Army on December 9th, and we'll talk more about Navy in a moment, there will be 80 bowl-eligible teams. And in JMU and JSU, as we mentioned, they're the first ones in if there aren't enough 6-win teams for all 82 bowl spots. And the bowl field will be filled without any 5-win teams. So that is not a great scenario. So if you are a 5-win team going into this weekend, obviously your best route to get into a bowl game is to win. If you win, you're in. I don't know how likely it is that we'll get more than more teams that are currently at 5 wins win and have more than enough bowl eligible teams to make all the bowl games. It looks like there's a good chance they will have to invite sub 500 teams to a bowl game, very possibly, although having JMU and JSU here take those first 2 available spots makes it trickier because then you need even more teams to lose that are ahead of you. So think of it as them having a half game essentially up on you in terms of this. So there are all those spots. There are several teams, 23 as we mentioned, that will be trying to become bowl eligible. And if you are a fan of one of those schools, obviously it's in your interest that those other ones lose. So we are going to take a look here at each of these matchups. And here, let's go up and go through by conference. And look at all the schools and all the teams that you need to root against this week in order to help your school's odds of getting in if they do, in fact, lose this weekend, which for your sake, I hope they get in. But here in the American, there's South Florida and Rice. So root against both of them. I mentioned Navy earlier. They're only at 5 wins. We know that Army-Navy comes a little later in the year. And so they're out of that game. Army's also at 5 wins. And so with both of them at 5 wins, at least one of them will be winning. So we know one of those spots will be, at least one will be claimed by one of these academies. But we don't want both of them. And I feel dirty saying we got to root against Navy winning this weekend so that way we eliminate the chance of both of them becoming bowl eligible. I don't feel great about that, but I'd really like to see BYU get into a bowl game. So let's keep going here. ACC, Virginia Tech turned it on a little bit late in the year, and so they're 1 game short playing UVA, but UVA's also turned it on late, so we'll see. They're not going to vie for bowl eligibility, but I bet they would love to crush Tech's hopes of doing so. And then Syracuse, even though they've only won 1 conference game, they are still 1 win away from a bowl eligibility somehow. So anyway, Big 12, as we mentioned, BYU. Then we also have UCF, who has an easier matchup this weekend, and TCU, who's playing Oklahoma. So they've also got a tough matchup. I really do, speaking of BYU, I really do like their odds if they do, in fact, lose to Oklahoma State this weekend, and there are some bowl openings for a sub 500 school, that I think BYU could get that invite. They have a great relationship with ESPN, who owns basically all of the bowl games at this point, and they always get a good draw, which we know a lot of these lower level bowl games really do not garner a lot of attention anymore. So I could see BYU getting in with if there are some of those spots and playing in a bowl game, a pre-Christmas bowl game that really don't get a lot of ratings. So again, that's not great, but it's better than not going bowling at all. And getting to a bowl game your first year in a Power 5 conference, I think would be a great accomplishment. So even if you are sub 500. Anyway, Big Ten. So in the Big Ten East, you're either in or out already. And then here in the West, we have three of them. We got Illinois, Minnesota, and Nebraska. And Nebraska is somehow a slight favorite over Iowa, but so I'm hoping the Hawkeyes win that one. And then Conference USA, we don't have anybody. We already mentioned Jacksonville State is ahead of everybody in getting one of those bowl spots ahead of the sub 500 teams, but nonetheless, there's no other teams there that are at 5 wins at the moment. And Army, we mentioned them. We hope that Navy goes into that game with 5 wins, and then that way only one of those two teams come out. And then in the MAC, here we have Northern Illinois and Central Michigan. Fortunately, the Chippewas are playing Toledo, so that is a tougher matchup for them. And then here in the Mountain West, Utah State and Colorado State are both at 500. Sorry, Aggies, got to root against you. In the Pac, this one's a bit of a bummer because Oregon State and Washington State have both been kind of America's team as the rest of their conference has abandoned them, and everybody wants to see them, I think, do well. And they started the Cougars started off promising, but have since floundered a little bit. I mean, the conference is really tough this year. It would be great to see them become bowl eligible and thwart their rivals' chance at making it to the playoff, and which at this point they'd be a kind of a de facto second Big Ten team into the playoff, or possibly a third if both Michigan and Ohio State go. So it would be great for them to knock them off. I think the hopes of that are low, but you never know what happens in rivalry games, so they still have a chance. But if they do lose, the consolation is one more slot available for a sub 500 team. Now, they might also be a favorite to get in to one of those slots if they do, in fact, stay open. And then here we've got both Florida and South Carolina, both trying to get in. Florida, who knows what will happen? It's a home game against Florida State, starting their backup quarterback. But anyway, we know that Mississippi State already lost, so again, that's taken the total number down to 23. And lastly, here in the Sun Belt, we mentioned JMU, and they're also one of those teams that is hoping that not enough teams become bowl eligible because they get in. And then here we've got ODU and Marshall and and Louisiana. All right, so I think we hit upon all 24 teams that are still vying for bowl eligibility. I guess 23 now with Mississippi State out. And so now, if your team is one of those teams, you know how to root this weekend. A lot of intriguing games to be invested in that otherwise you may not be. I have to think BYU, if there are a bowl availabilities after this weekend, and if they do lose to Oklahoma State, then I would like to think that because they seem to get good ratings, they have a good relationship with ESPN, who owns basically all of the bowl games. I like BYU's odds of getting one. I don't really know what they are. I don't know how that decision is made, but I have to think that BYU has a good chance there, possibly. But again, I'd much rather just see them win and then not have to worry about all of this. So anyway, let me know in the comments down below which team you're rooting for, if they're on the edge there of becoming bowl eligibility, and what scenarios you want to see play out this weekend in order to see your team make it to a bowl game. Let me know that in the comments. Also, please like the video and subscribe. And thank you so much for watching. And as always, go Cougs.